Hi guys, I just recorded a podcast with Veer and we spoke about musical comedy and just kind of navigating your way while writing new stuff and making content, which has become the thing for you as far as comedians and creators is concerned. So have a listen to it. It's pretty interesting and a very genuine take on a lot of things. So.
Perspectives. Life through perspectives and perceptions.
Episode 19, Nurturing the Talent with Aadar Malik.
Hello and welcome to the Perspectives podcast. My name is Vir Gupta and I'm your host. This is a show where I just have fun and honest conversations with people who I think are fairly interesting and people who I really admire as well. You can also find the show on your preferred streaming service as well as YouTube. But joining me on the show today, I have someone whose work I really enjoy. He has his very own stand-up special titled Stand Up the Musical, and he's one of the best improv artists in the country. He starred in quite a few roles in front of the camera as well. That is for TV and for cinema. And to be honest, he's one of the most talented people I've ever had on this show. He's also a part of a quote-unquote comedy collective. I don't know what that is anymore. But yeah, he's someone who I really adore and he's someone who I look up to and just enjoy his comedy a lot. More than anything, he's someone who's doing what no one else is doing by infusing stand-up comedy with music while also being great at many other things. But yeah, on this episode we go through Aadar's improv, acting and how it all started essentially. We also try and understand what's behind him and Neville Shah's hilarious live streams where they play two very different characters that is just incredibly hilarious. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome on comic, improviser, actor, and everything else that he's known for. Here's Aadar Malik.
Hey, Veer, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a really touching intro, especially about the comedy collective and not knowing where it is now. It's gone, dude. It's gone. It's absolutely gone.
So at least we have a definition of what that is. But I'd like to start from where it all did start, which is music and theater. So how did that essentially lead to improv? And I know that you have some roots with your family in music. So do you think that led a lot to where you are today? And are you happy about that?
Yeah, of course I'm happy about it because it actually made me realize that nothing really goes to waste, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something that at that point of time you don't really understand the value of, for me it was very valuable because I was on my way to wanting to compose music and try to, do that. But life happens, man. Shit changes, and you end up doing something like where you realize, okay, oh, I'm better at something else, and I clearly enjoy one thing over the other, and it's an art form I never explored before, which was performing on stage, like acting.
Mm.
And then I just let go of music for a long time until it all came back with stand up and music and improv and improvised music, etc.
Yeah, but that's another thing that I wanted to ask. There's just so much that you do. Like there's stand up, there's music, and there's theater, and there's behind the camera. So do you have like a preference, and how are you able to like switch? It's sometimes does it ever get you that, oh my god, this is just too much and too many things that I'm doing, and I need to switch so much.
Earlier it was, the thing was कि हम लोग खुद ही shoot कर रहे हैं, खुद ही edit कर रहे हैं, खुद ही
Ah,
we are trying to, so there was no option, and all of us started off behind the camera, so it was very easy for us to switch between the roles because we had worked for a long time behind the camera. तो
okay, cool.
उतना time के लिए we were working behind the camera, and after that when you get to be in front of the camera, which is where you really enjoy yourself, so that became like a party.
Uh-huh.
And then trying to edit it and whatever, which is again a lot of fun for us.
Okay.
But shooting something, then it became like exciting for us because that's where all the fun was for us. How do you think of that as work anymore?
Hmm. And is that what you do now? Think of everything as work, or are there some things that are defined for you and work, and some things that are just fun for you, which end up being work? For example, improv.
So essentially, like there is a lot of stuff that we're doing right now, like I'm doing right now, where you're up till like 5 in the morning and then go to bed at 6 and then you're back on set at 10 a.m. It's something that I'm like, we're really happy that we did, or like the happy that I ended up doing. Because if it wasn't fun, you wouldn't be able to get the fun of it. Like honestly, if it wasn't fun, you wouldn't be excited for it. You wouldn't even push your body to that extreme in order to get the best product out.
Yeah, and I would just like to move on to your music, which is essentially musical comedy. And I remember you saying this somewhere that you do songs on stage and you do normal stand-up routines as well. But there's a huge difference. In songs, you memorize the words. In stand-up, I don't think there's any comedian who memorizes lines. So does it ever get to you that, oh
Oh,
God,
I don't know how many comedians are not memorizing lines because
yeah?
all the comedians I've spoken to are like going like it's they're deconstructing each the use of each word. Yeah,
Hmm.
they may change the way they get there, and that's a restriction in music where you can't even change the way you get there. Though I found a way to do that also nowadays. But most stand-up comedians are very specific about the words they use, whether it's a specific Hindi word for that punchline or a specific English word, because sometimes whatever language it sounds funnier in is what you're using. A particular reference is funnier than another. Like say talking about Netflix might for that particular joke might be funnier than saying Amazon or saying vice versa. So
Hmm.
it's very specific for comedians, especially their comedy is very specific. Otherwise, if it's just loosey goosey, then nobody's going to care, honestly.
Correct, correct.
Like, वो नहीं होता है. Comedy is very specific.
So did that make it easier for you to do songs where it's just like, oh, it's the same thing except I have a guitar in my hand now?
I wouldn't say it's the same thing. There's the difference is like when you're testing out stand up, you've written it and then you're saying it in front of an audience. Now the added hoops that you're jumping through because of
Hmm.
the music and the lyrics and trying to make a facial expression while doing it, you can't just be lost in your own self. While unlike a lot of musicians or singer songwriters are, you have to
Right.
still look at the audience and judge how they're going. You have to take breaks in the song which you didn't intend because there's laughter or applause. So that is something you gotta prep for. You have to know what are you going to do in that period, because if you try to do an entire rotation of your chord cycle, that means it's too long. So that's too long of a break. So you have to figure out ways where you can just do one bar and then maybe come back off beat because the audience stopped clapping. Those are different kinds of hoops you have to jump through while doing music, but that only comes with experience. And the guitar, yeah, a lot of comedians have tried to analyze the fact that, oh, it's only the guitar and I'm doing the same thing, and I've failed miserably, and I've seen it happen to a lot of my glee. So it's hilarious when somebody says it's just the guitar and the audience doesn't care, but it's about being funny. And when you're not funny, the audience is going to hate you more because you have a guitar in your hand.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see that happening to a lot of people who think that they're just talented with the guitar
Mm,
and get on stage and be like, okay, I can strum
mm,
a few chords and I'm going to do well. But essentially, I think with
mm.
you also, it's like those pauses. And like even in
Yeah.
your like Wi-Fi truss on the video, it's those pauses which get the laughter in some way. Is it just something that's happened over the years that, okay, I play guitar and I do comedy. That's why I've learned that, okay, I have to pause here and I wait for a laugh as such.
No, that came from theater, and that is something that cannot be taught, honestly. It takes a lot of time, and I've been doing this for about 15 years now. Stand up happened later in my life. So
Huh.
this is something that has existed. Judging the audience is something that has been there for a very long time. It's just finally that I've figured out how to amalgamate and put them all together into one
Mhm.
cohesive performance. And thank God for stand up, because it allows you to do that. It allows you to get every card that you have in your arsenal and then put it in front of an audience in a matter of half an hour or 20 minutes, whatever.
Hmm.
So that is extraordinary as a form that stand up is. It allows you to do anything. But like it is something that takes time to learn. It takes time to hone and understand. And if you're doing only stand up,
Hmm.
maybe it would have taken me longer. Because
Right.
I came from a theater background and you're watching other actors work, you're watching some incredibly great actors work in front of you while rehearsing. And I was lucky enough to be part of troops like that. I was lucky enough to be working in theater that people would kill to be part of in casts. And that also took time. I went through extremely shitty productions with horrible actors and terrible writing. And so, in a way, that's like knowing the shitty people, like understanding that how terrible this is. That is also a learning, because then you know that this is terrible,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
have experience that this person did this, and if I do this, it's going to fail, because you know that it failed on stage. So you avoid certain things while writing the comedy also and while performing it. So it's like you have that experience of somebody else failing, which you
Hmm.
don't get to do in stand up. You've got to do it yourself. So it might take even longer for you to make that judgment.
But I think stand up is also essentially a character, and you're playing a character, whether you're singing a song as well. Do you think that's at the end made it easier for you to go on stage and tell jokes? Or do you think that's made it harder that since you have to restrict yourself in this mold of just one character or something like that?
It works to a great degree, like the way you just said it. I do think of it as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, stand up started as a character. I was working on a play where I was playing a stand up comedian, and this is
Oh,
just the
wow.
evolution
Okay.
of that character in my head. And I'm constantly helping him evolve and change. And it's taken a long time for me to figure that character out because the only three-dimensional person on stage is you. And I was speaking to like a bunch of stand-up comedians, but I think someone who stayed in my head with regard to his advice was Zakir Khan, where he was like, when you're creating characters on stage, nobody is going to have more depth and dimensions than you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the character that you create for yourself is what is going to outshine the others. So you have to make sure that you are making the other characters simpler, because the audience then has too much to calculate, which is
Mm-hmm.
also a great way of looking at it.
Right.
Sometimes you don't have to work as hard on the characters. The why people say stand-up comedian stereotype is it lends itself to storytelling much easier.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
you are narrating something, you're not watching a show on screen. You're not watching a Christopher Nolan movie where you can see that this character has 20 layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching a person narrate a story, and look at your grandmother narrating a story. Good was good, evil was evil. It was
Correct.
as
Correct.
simple as that. It was easier for you to follow. That's what I think I took away from that conversation with him, is that audience likes simplicity. And when you're narrating a story, the simplicity allows room for laughter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. The
Yeah, it
simpler your
does.
story is, that वो Einstein quote होएगा फोटो के नीचे, तुम लोग ने देखा होगा Einstein के फोटो के नीचे, where it's like, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you haven't mastered it or understood it yourself.
Yeah.
So think of it in those terms, not like thinking that the audience is 6-year-olds and have the intelligence of a 6-year-old,
Correct.
but even a 6-year-old should be able to get the joke to a certain degree. Maybe you can replace a 6-year-old with a person who's attending a stand-up comedy show for the first time, should have a brilliant experience. Who has
Mm-hmm.
no experience in stand-up should also enjoy it as much as somebody who has been watching the stand-up for a long time and understands the art form. In fact, that person should enjoy it more, but because that person is looking for more jokes,
Correct.
I think that is the simplicity. That is your 6-year-old.
Yeah, so when it comes to your music, I get your songs are very the topics are simple to understand. Again, like you said, it's about like even if we go to the goat song or the sister thing, it's a simple love story. But there are some parts like if you think about it, there's an additional layer. So do you try and do that to go that extra mile and make sure that okay, if that person gets it, let them get it. But I just want to make sure that the message is heard.
Yeah, because on the surface, it has to be absolutely clear what you're trying
Hmm.
to say, which is your
Correct.
setup punchline. Then
Hmm.
you can start working on the layers inside and start messing around with stuff that you'll be like, oh my God, they finally got it. Or, oh my God, 10
Exactly.
people got it. And I'm happy about that fact that 10 people
Hmm.
got that one particular inside joke that I was doing. But there were people who were laughing at this for the surface joke also.
Yeah.
It's that constant struggle, right? Where you're enjoying the music or the melody of a song versus the lyrics of a song.
Yes.
So here you're playing a double game with the lyrics. Also, like, music always has had the surface lyrics versus the internal क्या बोलते हैं, hidden meaning. Like, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
Eagle song, the Hotel California, is the most famous song about that. It's like,
Hmm.
oh no, it means 20 other things.
Yeah.
So music has always lent itself to that, where it's open to a higher interpretation. Sometimes you can control that even. So that is what's awesome about music, and
Yeah.
I think there's so much left for me to explore there.
So you did learn how to compose a song, as in you actually studied the art of composing a song. And so does that sort of inform the way that you write? I mean, does that sort of get you that, hey, okay, I need to write this chord structure to make sure this makes sense instead of writing a song of jokes?
Yes, that does make a difference. So not many people know that the chord structure to this song called "She Called Me Bhaiya" in
Hmm.
itself is a joke,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and only a musician gets that. And once I walked off stage, and the keyboard player of Alien Chutney from Veer Das's band
Right.
looked at me and went, nobody realizes that what you're doing in your playing is also a joke. And you can tell any keyboardist will get that humor, because you're doing something that is so cheesy for a keyboard player. and the audience sees you being a clown. So they are laughing at the clownishness, but you're actually doing something else on the inside. Well, like that's another inside joke for the people who actually understand the keyboard and understand that you're playing the four most common chords
Yeah.
in the this, and that in itself is the joke of the song, that you manage to make a pop kind of song by using the most common chords.
And some of the songs are random, but they also so relevant. At times, what sort of leads you to make these songs? Is it just a random thought, as always, like most stand-up sets or anything, or is there something that you work for, like songs about unnatural things? Was there a starting point that okay, I'm gonna write just songs about that and just random things?
No, that came way after. The title of the album came much after the songs were created. So after the 13
Hmm.
songs were done, we were like, oh, this is the natural title for it to be, because there's just that the only thing that connects all the songs is they're songs about unnatural things. These are songs that you wouldn't normally hear on a pop album.
Yes.
And hence it is an unnatural pop album, but it is still a pop album. There is no way that I can make original comedy music without it being pop, without it being an earworm. Because if I'm
Correct.
doing that, it's already niche that you're doing comedy music. On top of that, you're doing something that is not even easy on the ear.
Yeah.
Best way for people to remember a song or to have an impression on an original song is for them to be humming it afterwards.
Hmm.
And I take it as a big victory when I get one message also of people saying that I heard the goat song and I can't get it out of my ear. I'm singing it and people around me are looking at me like I'm crazy. It's like that's a great victory for the fact that, oh, I managed to compose something that people are, it's hummable. Even
Yeah.
though it is inappropriate, it is still hummable. Like
Exactly.
going, are you straight, are you gay, are you lesbian, or bi? You don't want to sing that in an elevator full of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
But my hope is that you can't stop yourself from doing it.
Yeah.
That is the intent.
And I think from first-hand experience, quite a few of your songs have been stuck in my head and my sister's head. And then we're going around the house humming these things and singing a few lyrics. And it's just so strange. People are looking at us like, what on earth is going on? One of the last things I'd like to cover is your live streams with Neville Shah, which essentially is you playing two different characters, very interesting characters, and you annoying Neville Shah and just bugging the hell out of him. And it started off very randomly with a very sudden live stream. So, what is going on and what is behind all of this?
The thing is, you know how like you develop characters over time. When we've
Yes.
been doing improv for a very long time, we've been doing this for about 6, 7 years. We've spent time on stage so much. We know how each improviser thinks. I know how Varun Thakur thinks on stage. I know that if I do this, Varun will pick up on the gag that I'm going for. I
Hmm.
know that if I do this, I can push Neville's buttons. And that kind of became the relationship on stage for me and Neville, where I would push his buttons and I would always get him angry. That became a shtick that Neville and I would do.
Right.
I think that carried forward into the podcast. Whether you take the big question or you take the internet said so, that relationship became a little popular amongst the people who actually watch the podcast, and that is what we're trying to take forward. We're trying
Hmm.
to take that relationship and push it to its zenith,
Hmm.
where the anger of Neville is that sometimes I behave like a dumb person, and he
Correct.
hates it because he knows I'm a smarter human being than that. But
Right.
I choose to be the dumb person. And here it's like I'm going aggro dumb and he's going aggro.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that is where the idea, I think we took the relationship of the podcast, we understood the game that we were playing and we ran with it. We just did the first live show, which I am sitting and editing right now.
Okay.
And I don't know if we're going to put it out on YouTube, we're going to put it out on Instagram, pata nahi hai, but it's good to see that that relationship translates to laughter in real time.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe we'll make an online show of it, maybe we'll continue doing live shows. But it's something that I'm so happy about, and like eventually it can become like a live touring show for us. I honestly don't know, but it's that blind exploration that I'm getting to do now, because we have followers on Instagram
Yeah.
and we have people who listen to the podcast, because
Yeah.
we wanted to do stuff that was experimental, and now I have my chance. So there's no more complaining about like, oh, I have to figure out what's popular or what shit like that. So I can work at something hard enough and make it popular for us. So that's something that I'm very excited about, because we're sailing in blind waters now.
Exactly. I mean, when I saw it for the first time, I think the first time you guys went live was when I saw it, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then it went on for the next week, which I was happy about. But yeah, it's gone on ever since,
Hmm.
and I hope that it becomes a show. But you're doing so much right now: theater, acting on stage, and for the camera as well, and comedy. If these four things weren't there, what do you think you'd be doing? I mean, is there something you think you'd be doing otherwise?
I'd figure out something creative, or
Yeah.
if not, then I'd be doing something that is technical, I guess, but it would be related to performance art, or I don't know. It'll probably be something on a technical field where I get to edit or I get to do something, or it honestly don't know. I studied law, but I did that because I enjoyed reading and I enjoyed hanging out with my friends who were studying law. It was such a dumb reason to do law because I was okay doing it because I was performing on stage
Right, right.
and it wasn't getting so hectic. The day it got too hectic for me is the day I quit law. And that was my
Hmm.
last semester, which I think my mother regrets because I could have given her an LLB.
I think honestly that's the perfect way to close this out. And on that note, we do come to the end of this episode. But honestly, thank you so much, Aadar, for doing this. It truly means a lot.
Thank you, Veer. It was awesome talking to you, man. You're doing a great job trying to do something so genuine and like it's. I genuinely had fun talking to you, man. It was so
Wow.
chill.
Wow.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you. And I think with that, we come to the end of this episode. And I truly had a great time. You can find Aadar Malik on Instagram at the Aadar Dry. And all his work is linked down below, and you'll truly be amazed by how great he is at everything he does, because he's so talented, and I had so much fun just putting this together. You can find me on Instagram at @V_Gupta. You can find the podcast at perspections.podcast on Instagram, and the podcast is also available on your preferred streaming service, whether it's Anchor, Google Podcast, Spotify, or whatever it is, even YouTube. Make sure to please leave a like, a comment, a subscription, a follow, or whatever it is that just supports the podcast. But seriously, thank you for listening as well. It means a lot to me. Until the next episode, goodbye.